Hello and welcome to Podcast of a Lincoln Geek. I am the Dan. It's not just my podcast, but the whole podcast is my fault, I think, probably.
Yeah, I think it was your inspiration and we kind of ran with it, isn't it?
Right, my moment of madness. I am joined by my co-host, Mr. Chris.
Hello.
Hello, and Mr. George. Hello, George.
Yeah, judge you.
Giorgio! How are you gentlemen today? All good?
Very well, thanks.
Ticking along.
We're continuing our game spotlight season. I believe this one is kind of a joint decision between us, though George is the only one that actually owns a copy. And what game is that, George? What are we talking about this week?
The definitely not copyright infringing Nemesis.
It's a completely 100% original idea.
Completely 100% original.
Not inspired by anything. Good choice of game. I love this game. I haven't played it as much as I would like to.
We will definitely have to rectify that when we do a 24-hour game-a-thon at some point.
That's the plan, hopefully.
So, for those of you who don't know what Nemesis is, Nemesis was brought out in the way back years now. I forget its original release date. After a Kickstarter campaign, they're now got numerous expansions for it. It's a lovely hidden role game which you can play completely cooperatively if you want.
Yes.
I mean, if you really want. I mean, it's not like we have a thing about hidden role games.
No, we're not typecast. But the one thing I do like about the hidden roles in Nemesis is it's kind of it's a choice, because you get a choice of two personal objectives.
You do indeed.
One tends to be selfless and one tends to be the slightly more evil one, if you want to go for the classic traitor. So if you're not comfortable being evil, you can go for the more cooperative one instead.
The greater good one.
And then sometimes you pick the evil one, and then your crewmates are all so nice to you that you decide to selflessly sacrifice yourself.
Wait, you've stolen my story for later, George.
Well, actually, I was just leading you into it, but you know.
Yeah, that's fine.
He was gently easing you into it.
I mean, I was going to explain wait for you to explain the concept of the game first, but yes, just in a nutshell, I did pick the evil objective because I thought I'd kind of not role play, but I'd kind of be the character of an evil scientist. My objective was to get an example of the completely original eggs with aliens in them. No, sorry, intruders in them. Yes,
Intruders.
My objective was to get just a live egg and get off the ship, and I didn't care about anything else or anyone else. But when I did that, I had a crisis of conscience because everyone else was being so nice to me, and they saved my life so many times. I probably could have got off the ship earlier, but I decided to stay on and try and help them survive too. Of course, it ended in my doom.
It did indeed, sorry.
No good deed goes unpunished.
To be fair, had these people not helped you, you would have died long ago.
I probably would have died anyway, but I thought it was an interesting character arc, and it's one of the more memorable games I can really think of, really, just because of that kind of story it kind of created. Well, for all of us.
That is one of the brilliant things about Nemesis, is it's not necessarily about the mechanics of it, it's the storytelling, your own version of the not aliens storyline.
Yeah.
I'm going to ban that word.
Before I go rattle about that game for so long, can you explain just the concept of the game, please, George?
The basic concept is that you are a crew aboard the ship Nemesis, who have woken up from cryosleep to find a rather deceased-rated corpse in front of you. You find out that there are some intruders on the ship which bear no resemblance to the Alien franchise. Strictly coincidental. And you have to work together to get the ship back operational, or make sure the ship is operational and that you're going to be jumping to the right location. As you move around the ship, you keep hearing noise, and the more and more you hear, the more likely it is that you're going to get attacked by one of these intruders. There are a lot of things kicking around, but generally speaking, it's relatively simple that you move, play cards to do actions, and you shoot stuff. It all sounds so simple, and then you actually have to play it. And it's amazing how resilient these intruders are when they're taking shotgun rounds to the face. And how much they hurt back, and how squishy.
Oh my god, did they hurt back?
Especially when you're fighting Da Queen. Yes, our lovely Dino girl, when she first played it, kind of got herself trapped in the engine room with Da Queen. And
oh my god.
We house ruled on the day, and as we've subsequently found out, it wasn't technically correct, but we love the cinematic moment of her firing her shotgun at the Queen, doing nothing, and then physically, hand to hand, I picture her as Ripley with the powerlifter and hand-to-handing the Queen and beating her to death.
So she actually beat the Queen in a melee fight?
Yes, but we house ruled it, didn't we? Yeah. She fought so well and so gallantly in saving her crew. We house ruled it. Yeah.
Yeah. You need, as long as everyone agrees to it, I don't see a problem with rules like that.
Yeah, we have since had a few other games where we've had some epic Queen moments. Pete, our fearless soldier who had stacked up a ridiculous body count.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about the aliens being hard to kill. Not for Pete, though. It's the best I've ever seen him roll dice. Did we run out of alien body tokens at one point?
We had one left.
We have one left.
My residing memory of that was the moment he was just about to be able to get into the cryo chamber and save himself. Instead, he had to fight off the last alien, protecting all his fellow crewmates, and then got smeared along the wall as we entered hyperspace.
Yeah, he couldn't get to the hyperspace, so it's a heroic sacrifice. That was from the game I played as well, and it's just full of classic moments. I think you were the only survivor of that game, weren't you, George? You were the ship's android.
Can I ask a question about that?
Yeah.
Pete did obviously really well in that game because it's not a straightforward game because there is an element of luck with the dice rolls, but there's a bit of luck mitigation, isn't there? Now, how well tooled up was his character?
Ridiculously.
He had a good weapon, didn't he? He had a good weapon. And
He'd got all his tools in play.
the soldier's main ability is to kind of mitigate dice rolls, isn't it?
He gains bonus damage and he does lots of little bits and pieces that help boost everything.
Because coming across equipment in the game is pretty difficult. I remember that when I played it.
It can be tricky to get enough equipment, certainly.
Exactly. You know, I don't dislike the game. I like the game. But I thought coming across that equipment to get your luck mitigation in place was tricky.
Yeah, it's one of those, if you get a bad start, you have a tricky time through the rest of the game, certainly. Don't underestimate the tactical advantage of running the feck away.
Don't pick fights you can't win.
I was going to say, choose your fights when you actually can win them. Don't go off on your own and expect to win unless you're the soldier. And even then, that's not always a...
Even then, just the sheer amount of aliens throwing themselves at you.
You get unlucky with the wrong alien attack and it can properly cripple you. As you go through the game, you've got a series of light wounds, which basically just represent your general cuts and scrapes, and that they build and develop over time the more you get, and serious wounds which have fairly catastrophic gameplay impacts on you, like reducing your hand size or only being able to hold one item, or just continuously bleeding.
Gameplay wise, I find it was quite original because you have to manage your hand as well, because your cards are your actions, so you can either save them for combat or actually use them to move around and search, that kind of thing, can't you?
Yeah, the other hand management aspect is that there's a surprise phase.
Yes.
So if the aliens appear, depending on how many cards you have in your hand, they will get a surprise attack on you, potentially. So they can massively gimp you very quickly if you don't retain enough cards to survive.
Yeah, I found that out, didn't I, in the hard way.
I think it's very clever thematically as well, because if you do loads of actions, your guy's probably exhausted, not paying attention, they've got no cards, so they're easier to get a surprise. If you have a turn where you hardly do any actions at all, you've still got most of your hand left, so you're less likely to get jumped. I think it's a nice little touch.
Some of them are a bit clunky in places.
Like what? Which ones are clunky, would you think? What would you say?
I think the wound mechanic is probably the one which I dislike the most, and I think certainly...
Do you think it's too harsh? What's your issue with the wounds? Do you think
it's too random. Basically, every time you wound an alien, you draw a set number of cards from the deck to determine its health for that turn.
Yeah.
So one turn it might be ridiculously easy to kill, and then the next turn it will be really hard to kill.
Okay.
You can end up staging it, so you just... Like, you could do 4 or 5 successful attacks, and it just keeps being one less than the wound limit that turn, and it...
The wounds stack, though, don't they? So if you do get 2 or 3 wounds...
They do stack, so eventually it becomes more and more likely, but it doesn't quite make sense that they suddenly gain a whole load of extra stamina and endurance.
They just had a can of Red Bull or something off screen.
Yeah, I would say they just drank some ambrosia.
I like the sound mechanic in this. You know, the noise and how that works within the game. It's almost realistic in that sense with it.
Yeah, the atmosphere of it is top notch as well.
Oh, yeah.
Just the aesthetics. You move around this creepy ship. You get sound, kind of little bubbles pop up around you. It's really cool.
It does create atmosphere, and it's not very often you get that kind of atmosphere from a board game.
Yeah,
the stories and the themes rip all over the game.
I mean, I've played this solo. I was just on the ship by myself, and I think there was only one intruder at the time, so I was just being followed by this one alien around the ship.
You've played the official licensed game, haven't you? The official Alien game.
Well, one of them. There's many official licensed
There's
games.
many of them, yes.
Yeah.
How, in your opinion, does Nemesis, not being a part of the official IP, stack up against the official IP-based game?
The ones I've played are Aliens, Colonial Marines. Not Colonial Marines, that's the video game. Aliens, Another Glorious Day in the Core.
Yeah, which is more based on the second movie than the first.
I do actually have Alien Fate of the Nostromo, which I've had a little mess around with, but I haven't actually played a full game of yet.
But how did they compare? How does it stack up?
I would say they're completely different kettles of fish, really.
And in that comparison, then, does it have as much atmosphere as Nemesis? Does Nemesis do a better job of it?
It's hard to say, really. I think they're both pretty good. I mean, the Alien game, like as in the first film, is a cooperative game, like 100% cooperative. You can't really combat the alien. There's no dice per se, so there's a lot less random chance than Nemesis. The Aliens game was kind of more of a campaign structure to it. You had like a set objective and multiple characters with guns and stuff. It's hard to compare them, but I think they all do a very good version of the Aliens franchise. I don't know if you agree with that, George, from what you played.
Yeah, I think that they fit different holes in the niche of what they do. I would play them for different reasons. The Glorious Day of the Core is a great campaign game full of action and drama, whereas Nemesis, I feel like it's a nice big box co-op game that happens to have some backstabbing in it.
One thing I just want to point about Nemesis as well is the models are fantastic. I'm sure you would love to have them painted, Chris.
I think the models are pretty damn stunning.
Yes.
It's one of the favourite elements of this game, in my opinion, and I've not played it much. And I think they were ported over to the tabletop simulator very well.
I like the infected mechanic. I think that's pretty good. Like, you can get wounded, and if you get wounded, you can scan that card to see if it's actually kind of infected you with like a chest burster or not.
Little things like that, where, I mean, especially in the physical game where it uses a colour filter sheet so that you have to physically slide your card in to see if you're infected.
Yeah, it's like an actual like little scanner. It's really cool. And
I love that. I love that.
I love the uncertainty. Like in my case, where I was the evil scientist with a heart of gold, I actually managed to get off the ship, but then it turned out I was infected, and I kind of had a chest burster on the way home. It just wasn't to be. And another really cool, just so many little cool details are really good. Like, most of us heal with like med kits and stuff like that, because we're humans, but you were the ship's robot, George.
Yeah.
And you could only heal with like duct tape. You had to find like
duct tape and toolkits. Yeah, had to physically, mechanically repair myself. That was cool.
So gameplay wise, it's just a really nice little detail they've added. That why would robots need first aid kits?
I'd say it's a really good game, and I'll say we will probably be playing another one on Tabletop Simulator soon. So if you are interested in playing with us, get on our Discord service, because we do occasionally throw out lovely little invites for you all to join us.
We may even stream it as well.
We got a comment from Pete, the aforementioned soldier. He loved the chaotic nature of the game, as plans may not pay out as one would hope, depending on what aliens spawn, how they attack you, etc. There's a lot of chaos, there's a lot of luck, there's so many different decks of cards you have to draw from, so many dice. Probably the most Ameritrash game you could probably have. I don't know, for the amount of luck and theme. I don't know if you would agree with that.
Yeah, there is a lot of merry trash about it. I think that little bits of Euro sneaking in there with the hand management.
Very tiny slivers of Eurogaming in there.
But it's a story-based game.
Yeah.
And I think that the randomness works really well for that it helps you tell those stories.
The other question for Discord is from Matt. I love the Alien franchise. Yep, so do I. I love sci-fi and I love board games. Hey, we've got some very similar interests, Matt. That being said, I typically don't really like co-op games very much. How much Nemesis is cooperative versus competitive, and how would it compare to games like Pandemic and Spirit Island? We kind of already covered this at the beginning, didn't we?